Good morning, everybody, and thank you once again for those of you in attendance earlier for attending the webinar. We are going to commence with the webinar from this point onwards. A few points of interest concerning the webinar. The timing of the webinar should be no longer than 45 minutes, so we'll endeavour to get through the webinar within that period of time, subject to any questions which may be asked at the end of the webinar. So within around about 45 minutes, that should enable me the opportunity to address any questions and obviously also highlight some of the key functionality associated with the software. So for those of you who also weren't in attendance a few minutes ago before we started the initial introduction, my name is Tim Pearce and I work within the sales team of BTC Software. And unlike other webinars whereby people are aware of our company as a whole, some of our kind of unique selling points, what we deem to be unique selling points, and our general ethos, I thought it would be a good opportunity, if you don't and aren't aware of that, to explain that to you now. So I've got a slide deck in front of me, so hopefully you can all see my screen here with the IFA logo and BTC Software. The eagle-eyed of you may notice that below BTC Software there is a Software Excellence Winner stamp, which we're very proud of, which we won last year. And just to notify you, we have been nominated again in various categories for the Software Excellence Awards. That's something that we're very proud of, and you'll probably hear about that in due course from ourselves. Okay, so without further ado, let's begin. So I've already explained, I won't bore you with the detail again, but my name is Tim Pearce, and here's what can only be described as a rather not stunning picture of myself that I think is taken directly from our website. So some of you, if you looked at our website, may have looked at the Meet the Team page, and that's my, almost looks like a crime photo there, but it's my photo, so that's my picture. And I think I've done myself the favour of turning it from colour into black and white. But that's me. I work within the sales team. Just give you a real kind of brief overview. I've been involved in accountancy software for the last 10 years, working through various companies, and been with BTC Software, which I'm delighted to say now for the last 3.5 years. Okay, I want to give, as I sort of alluded to at the start, I want to give you an understanding of who BTC Software are for those who aren't already aware. So BTC Software, we were founded in 1999, so we've been in the industry, at the forefront of the industry for a number of years now, getting on to 20 years. Unlike other software providers within the industry, some you may have encountered, we pride ourselves on being fiercely independent. So what does that mean? That means that we can be very proactive. We're light of touch when it comes to development, and it's something that's becoming more and more unique within the industry in the fact that we're independent. So we're not owned by any big bad private equity firms that are looking to squeeze every last penny, and that reflects in the ethos of the company. We consider ourselves the provider of choice for SME practitioners. I think that's born through the fact that we've got in the region of 1,500 practices. So that's actual accountancy practices which are reliant on our software. Our growth is in the region of 10% year in, year out. So again, we're very proud of that statistic. And in addition to the 1,500 practices who are reliant on our software, in most cases on a day-to-day basis, we also have in the region of 500 accountants in industry. So I appreciate the IFA is comprised of both in terms of accountants in practice, those who are essentially running practices, businesses, and those that work within the corporate industry. All of our operations are based in Surrey, so we are just left of London, just tucked inside, unfortunately, the M25, which plays havoc with my commute most mornings. And I've already alluded to the fact that we were the winners of the Software Excellence Awards for Best Tax Software, what is now last year. and in September we'll be attending the Software Excellence Awards, having been nominated in 4 separate categories, including, again, Best Tax Software. Okay, so that's a little indication of who BTC Software. But what do we do? So there's a mission statement that you can see at the top of the screen here. It says BTC Software specializes in feature-rich, cost-effective, integrated, and MTD-compliant tax and practice management software. Our focus is to make life easier and more rewarding for accounting professionals. But I guess the bigger question, if you want to break that down, is how do we do that? So I'm going to sort of just provide examples of what we do in terms of what we offer, and in addition, what we can help with in addition to what we offer. So we provide year-end accounts production, so statutory accounts across different remits, and we'll look at some of those very, very shortly. In addition to that, we'll offer and do offer company house filing. So we have a 2-way submission, both to HMRC and to Companies House. We're going to look at some of the practice management functionality in terms of tracking events. So that's what we offer, and that's wrapped around the compliance essentially. And clearly, it wouldn't be tax software without the ability to file tax returns. We have a dual option. So whilst we're not forcing everybody down the cloud route for those who want on-premise desktop software, we are providing a dual option. So we have a dual option of both on-premise and cloud solution. And what will be added for the next slide is, because it's subject to release next month, or certainly this autumn, is the MTD for VAT module. So we're very excited to be nominated as a preferred vendor for the HMRC in terms of MTD for VAT, and we've already spearheaded, in many senses, our technology has been at the forefront. So we have and will have an MTD VAT ready for the market. It's already ready in terms of it's been written. We're just waiting on the final nod from the revenue. So what do we provide in addition to what we offer? So we can provide complete product support. We offer product training and data migration. Now they're very key areas, because I'm sure a lot of you will be aware that some companies will offer support, but it won't be complete telephone support. It might be ad hoc email support. And in some cases, you'll pay for support. Product and training. So the product training is part of the subscription. It's not a revenue stream for us. We're not looking to sell by confusion and then in addition sell training, but we offer that as part of a subscription. And also data migration. So both product training and data migration for the 3 other software providers with whom I've worked have been chargeable features, whereby for us they are included as part of the subscription. Okay, we're going to come back to this slide at the end of the presentation, but for any interested parties prior to the demonstration commencing, you can see here we have a number of incentives. So we're very, as a member of the IFA, so we're very excited to be working with the IFA, and I've had a number of meetings with Jonathan Barber as to how we can help IFA members with a challenging role, within the challenging role of accountancy. Again, that's both within practices and within industry. So we'll look at some of that IFA membership entitlement at the end of the presentation. But obviously, that carries no water unless you like what you see. So what we'll do now, we'll look at the products, and just to confirm, at the end of the session, I'll open up the floor for a question and answer period, and we'll be finished by no later than 10:45. So some of what I'm going to show you will be at a very high level based on the time that's allowed, but as you can see from the initial entry on the IFA membership entitlement slide, there is a 15-day free trial of our full solution suite available as a member of the IFA. And what I'd also like to add is, if there's anything you were hoping to see but haven't seen today, do let me know, and we'll cover that on the questions section at the end. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to move straight into the product now. So I just want to give you a complete understanding, and I've referenced it earlier in the second slide, as to what or in fact maybe in the first slide, in terms of what we offer as a product. So BTC Software offer a integrated solution. So what does that actually mean? That means we offer integration through various modules within the confines of a database. What's included in the database? Again, I've touched on this earlier, but it's practice management, accounts production, and tax filing. So that's the trinity of key modules. Alongside that, there's a lot more functionality that we'll sort of look at in due course. But ultimately, the module itself, if we look at year end and all the aids around that, is practice management in order to track time, events, deadlines, or even just to use as a client hub to access your client's details. And then year-end accounts, so we'll look at year-end accounts shortly. And in addition to that, the ability to file tax returns. Okay, so I think the best starting point in most cases is to explain that although we are looking here at an integrated, completely integrated solution, not just in terms of the components of our database, but integrated with other key players in the market. So we have APIs that we're going to look at shortly in terms of bookkeeping solutions. But moreover, as an integrated piece, it integrates between all the key elements in terms of practice management, accounts, and tax. Despite that, we have within the software the ability to break down the views, stroke access points to client details. So I've clicked on the client option at the top of the screen here, and you'll see that's presenting me with two options. An option to view individuals related to the practice in terms of clients, and an option to view organizations. So if I click on the individual view, that will take me from the current view, which is showing me all of my clients who are deemed to be organizations, and it's going to open up the individual view of the database, which is going to show me the following. So these clients comprised in the individual view are as such. They are going to be individual tax return clients, sole traders, and individuals who are associated with the organizations, by which I'm sort of referring to directors within limited companies or partners within partnerships. So that's view number one. And then view number two, as we already discussed and we started off looking at, is the organizational view. So to give you a definitive guide as to the types of organizations you can work with as a practitioner, I'm just going to select the new record option. And you can see here we have a client type. So you can see here we have the option to work with the following. I won't read them all out for you, but you can see for yourself there we've got all the bases covered in terms of the types of organizations with whom you'd need to work or would be looking to work with. The big picture here is that we provide all the templates that you need to work with that client base. So that's the organizational view. So just to confirm, because it's quite a key point, we've got an individual view, sole traders, individual tax returns, and associated individuals and organizations. And as you can see here, the vast majority of my organizations actually relate to, if we look at the left-hand, right-hand side on the grid system, limited companies, but we do also have a partnership and a charity and a PLC shown as well. Okay, so what we're going to do today, because as mentioned, I know there are a number of accountants in industry on this particular demonstration. I want to make it as generic is the wrong term, but I want to make it as all-encompassing as possible, so it's relevant to all parties, is start to work with a limited company. So rather than looking at a partnership, we'll look at a limited company. And the idea, very quickly, is to show you some of the key functionality within practice management. We're then going to look at our accounts production module and how it links with various accounting packages. And then we shall look at the tax filing side. Okay, so I've clicked on Smith's software of Hammersmith. They're now identified with a blue line across them, and that's opened up a number of details here in terms of tabs. So the big picture here is that every client with whom you work will have their own tabs. So all, what I've got there, maybe 20 clients, all 20 clients there will have their own tabs in which you can store information against a particular client. So it's not a dumping ground for all of your client data per se. It's relevant to the client with whom you're looking and working with. Okay, so what I plan on doing is running through the tabs from left to right. So we'll look at some of the key practice management. Anyone that has any questions around practice management, because I'm going to go through it at quite a high level, or if there's anything, as I referenced earlier, that you haven't seen that you're hoping to see, let me know. Call me. I will email you my details as a result of your registration today, and we can cover it in more of a granular detail. So if there's anything you're hoping to see that isn't being covered, let me know. It may be that it's not within the database, but in all likelihood it may well be. So let me know and we'll go over that on a one-to-one basis, and I'm happy to provide a one-to-one demo of our practice management. Okay, so the first page is that of details. So you can see within the details page, I've got a couple of key options just below the tab settings themselves. So the first one is to send emails. So you can send documents via our practice management throughout various stages in use of the database, which we'll see within the document section later on. I've got the ability to open up our company secretarial solutions. So we very recently introduced company secretarial. If I select company secretarial, that will open company secretarial. So for those of you who already have company secretarial software and are looking at our software in terms of the core product, it's important to mention that we have integration currently with a company secretarial module, and that integration, because it's a new product that's just been released into the database, as you can see, will be grown over the autumn months. So the idea is that it was very, very soon integrate with our accounts production in terms of working out, as an example, dividends and introducing those into the accounts production side of the database. But right here, right now, we have the ability to open up COSEC. Anyone who's interested in COSEC, feel free to let me know. We can provide demos of company secretarial, so you're welcome to let me know if you'd like to see that in isolation or in conjunction with the full product. The next tab relates to a company house search check. So I've got the ability to search for a company. Once I've picked up that company, it will import all the detail found within company's house. So we're talking really about details such as address details, incorporation dates, UTR numbers, that kind of information that takes time in terms of putting into a database when you're using new software. So that's a real nice shortcut for you when you're onboarding clients. The bigger picture is, as you can see below, that we have a number of tabs associated with this client. Now, this is the detail in nearly all cases. If you're using other competitive software or competition is probably a better term, to BTC software, we can take that data, and we do it on a daily basis, and we can move that data into our database. So our database would come fully loaded with all your client detail. So that company house search check really is designed for when you're onboarding new clients. Okay, so I won't dwell on the generic data listed against the company that we're looking at the moment, Smith Software, only to say that we can move this data into our database. So our database comes, in most cases, preset and with all the data, so it's fully loaded at the point of use. Okay, the next tab is relating to some detail around the clients. This is a relatively new tab, and we've introduced it for a number of reasons, AML being one of them, but there's other options and reasons as to why you would choose to use Know Your Client. Really, it's all about validation of the client. So you can see here I've got the option to move in documents relating to the client. That might be passport information, but again, it's all around validation of a client and verifying that the client is correct and present. So you can scan in documents and you can actually email again from within this particular tab, and you can associate any potential risk element that you'd like regarding this client. So it's a point of reference with regards to verification. Key dates, we've got a number of key dates assigned to this client. The important thing to mention here is that these key dates don't just lay dormant within the database, but moreover they are reported on in terms of deadlines. So you can see here we've got dates around the fact we're looking at a limited company, and these dates will be presented to you and won't just lay dormant here, but this is a point of reference for those key dates. We're going to look at how we can see a report with some of the key dates listed. Contact details. So again, that's the kind of information we would tend to move in for you if you're using other software. So I won't dwell on that. I need to move on to associated individuals. Again, in all likelihood, we'd move in both individuals and organizations against your existing client base. But you see, I have a director who is associated with this particular client, and this individual will become apparent when we sign off the accounts later on. Associated organizations. So for those of you who are working with groups, franchises, even if you have a director with responsibility for a number of your clients, you want to acknowledge that from the database for reporting purposes, you can do just that from within this tab. So this associated organization tab will enable you to recognize that there's a link between various organizations. Again, that's manifested within the reporting functionality within the database. Just to explain, in order to pick up the relevant organization in which to twin, you would select the add option, and that enables you to identify the relevant organization that you're looking to twin with this organization. Appointments, you can see here we have an external meeting listed with this particular client. This is really a nice segue into the reporting functionality found within the database. So we have, as you can see, an external meeting. I would imagine that you will have in place a number of procedures around reporting on meetings. In most cases, it would be as in my case, it will be a leather diary. So that may or may not be kind of groundbreaking for you. In most cases, it won't be. But what it will do, and the way our software does work, is on what we call, it's a bit of a colloquial term, but we call it and term it the 3R principle. So it's all about reporting, reminders, and recurrences. So I've got a yearly client review listed with this client. That's great. It's listed within the appointments tab. But moreover, that reminder will come to me in the format of a flash up. Now, it works a little bit like Outlook in that you'll receive a reminder in line with an event. As with Outlook, you can push it back if you so wish for a period of time, or you can mark it as completed. But essentially that reminder will come to me. Now, the big picture here is not that we just have a meeting that's going to be reminded of, but that it sets recurrences. And we'll look at recurrences when we look at an event that we create later on. But whilst we're on the subject of reporting per se, I just want to explain some of the key reports that you probably will use. I know the majority of our client base that are using our practice management do rely on heavily. So the first, if we look down from top to bottom within the reporting menu, is a tax return status report. So I've got the ability here to determine the statuses of my tax returns, not just generically, but by the status. So if I so wish, I can check the status of all my individual tax returns. Now that tax return for those of you, or that tax return status report for those of you who are practitioners, will come in very, very handy throughout December / January in most cases. But you can also define the search against other remits such as partnership tax returns, trust tax returns, and corporation tax returns. So that's the first main report within the software. The second one is that of year-end accounts. So I started off by mentioning that the software enables submission of the year-end accounts. So in the case of a limited company, it will create the IXBRL file, which is then attached to the C2600. But in addition, it also enables submission to, as you can see here, company's house. So it's a byproduct of using the software, which is the big benefit in that you're using the software to prepare the what would be the IXBRL file, the year-end accounts for a limited company, and as a byproduct, it produces the fitted accounts, which you then submit directly through to company's house throughout the usage of the software. VAT return status, so our software enables you to submit VAT returns. That leads us on to making tax digital. Here we have a inclusion report for individual tax returns, and below that we have the making tax digital qualification page for those who are over the VAT threshold. So again, I've referred to it at the outset. For anyone who has an interest in how we can assist with making tax digital for that, let us know. We have the product ready. We're just waiting on the final say from the revenue before we release that. That will be in the autumn. So that will be released in the autumn. The technology is already there. So if you want to know how you can utilize that, let us know. I'll be happy to run that past you. The client report enables us to extract data from within the client hub. So that's a nice extract tool whereby you can bulk report, you can move out data in line with your client's details. Effort summary enables you to attribute effort to a task. And activity time log summary will automatically, so this is an important fact here, automatically records time spent on an event which is utilized or you're using the software to complete. So whereby you're utilizing the software to complete the task, it will automatically track that time associated with a given event. For those of you who operate within practices whereby there are multiple users, you can define this search. So you can define as to the user, the person who's actually working on a given event, which is really a halfway house between being able to use the software as a time and fee module. Now, I will say a time and fee module is the next event on the horizon outside of MTD for VAT. So we already have the ability to track the time. So really, we're halfway there in terms of producing a full-blown time and fees module which will produce invoices. At the moment, our software won't automatically produce invoices, but that is subject to change. So for those of you who are listening to recording of this webinar further down the line, it may be that that's already been introduced. Finally, the main key event is the pending events report. So the pending events report is going to provide me with an holistic view of all of my, when I say my, as a sole practitioner within a practice, all of my key events. Really, it's a great search opportunity to confirm workflow. So that's really how it's designed to play out. So let's just say, for example, I don't want to search via me. I've already mentioned that a lot of our practitioners will have 3, 4, 5, 6 and upwards users of the software within that particular business. So at the moment, as you can see on the top left hand side here, I've defined the search against the tasks which are listed for me to complete. But that could be, and in some cases will be, a search that as a principal in the practice you want to define via the whole of the client base. So the idea here is I can say, right, how many year-end accounts do I have? And it will bring it up by typing that to the search criteria. How many individual tax returns do I have? And it will bring it up for me. How many corporation tax returns do I have? It will bring it up for me. How many engagement letters are outstanding? It will bring it up for me. So really, you're looking at a holistic view of all of the tasks associated with all of the members of the team. So it's a really fantastic tool, and it's a great way of moving away from multi-colored spreadsheets because the information populates as a result of your usage of the software. So I know, having spoken to a multitude of practitioners, many will still employ multi-colored spreadsheets. So the onus is on you as a practitioner or as an accountant in industry to keep updating the events, being proactive. The idea of our software is you're proactive at the outset in terms of introducing an event, and then if you set a recurrence of the event, you don't need to be there after. You have the option to export this particular report internally, since there's an export option and a print option. You can search via the statuses. You can create your own statuses in the same way you can create your own reports. You can search via the event. You can search via the client. You can search via references. And you'll notice the eagle-eyed view that it runs a session time, idle time, active time report within the report. So for those system events, an event whereby you're using the software to facilitate that event, it will track the time automatically for you. What I'm going to do very quickly, because time's not on our side, but I'm going to very quickly show you how we create an event and then we'll move on briskly. So the idea is that we would select an event from the drop down here. So the bold events, or those listed in bold, are the system events. So I'm going to look at year-end accounts very, very shortly. But those below are non-system events. So these are events that I can create myself. These are events that you're not using the software to finalize. So let's create an event called, or let's acknowledge an event called Payroll 100. So this is an event I've created in previous demos. The idea is that you can provide a description around the event. You can set a start date, a due date, a reminder date. So we'll have the reminder due to come to us today. We'll have the completion date as tomorrow, because obviously it needs to be ahead of the due date, or at least not behind it. And then, as I mentioned, you've got the ability to request pop-up reminders to come to you via the reminder date time option here. So I've got the ability to say, right, I'd like a reminder to come to me such and such a time prior to the event commencing as a reminder to the event. Now, what will happen if you move into the recurrence option is you'll be then invited to confirm the spaces between the events if it's a recurring event. So if it's an event which recurs or reoccurs, then you will be able to acknowledge that. So you'll be invited to confirm the frequency of the event within a calendar year. So let's say it's a quarterly event. I can select monthly, and I can say, right, I want this event to be reported on every quarter. So I've changed that, and the range of recurrence has changed below, or it might be every 6 months, and you see the range of recurrence has changed there below. So if I save and close that particular event, and then go back into the pending events report, and select payroll, we can see that event is now shown for us with a due date, a start date, and a reminder assigned to the given event. So that's how you create an event. It's that simplistic. So you're a little bit proactive at the outset, and then if you set it as a recurring event, you don't need to be proactive thereafter. You just need to manage the event in accordance with the pending events report. Okay, reports and letters. So we have a number of reports and letters within the software. It's broken down really into two areas. We've got client letters. So you'll see here within the client letters, I have a number of letters that I've introduced myself, such as Adam's letter, which is a letter that I've created again on a previous webinar. The ones which are default options are detailed tax questionnaires, engagement letters, payment letters, and the simple tax questionnaire. Now, how our software works is it enables you to pick up a letter within the confines of client's details. So you see here I've got engagement letter to which I can move and send out to a given client. So I can email from the database, or I can use a secure portal. So that's how I would pick up a letter. The software utilizes something known as database tags, which picks up relevant information assigned to that client. The other option is to produce a bulk report, i.e. mail merge. So I can choose bulk report creation, and I can suggest that I want all of my clients to receive an engagement letter from me. And as you can see there, they're all moved into this particular cycle. For those to whom it's not relevant, you can delete them and move them away from the cycle. And I have the option here to create the report and thus email the client or print off a copy of the engagement letter. So it's going to pick up information assigned to the client within the practice management details page. So names, salutations, etc. The other option is the tax return and accounts production covering letter. So here I have the option to produce a global template, as you can see there. I flipped it into edit mode, which means that I can produce a background cover for the tax return cover letter, and I can utilize the database tags. If I select the general option, so I'm looking at the bottom left-hand side of the screen, as you can see the drop-down, I can then say, right, I want the software to pick up information assigned to that client. Great, we know it can do that already because we've looked at the engagement letter. But moreover, I want the software to pick up fluid information associated with the tax return itself. So I want, within this letter, this global template, for every time I produce a tax return to pick up tax refund due now, I want it to work it out. I don't want to have to create an individual cover letter. So if you're of that persuasion, you can utilize our cover letters and it would do just that for you. So it's bespoke to offering not just for the client, but for a given tax year. Okay, so that's reports and letters covered at a very high level. Any questions or anybody that has an interest beyond what I've shown you, let me know and I can cover this, as I say, on a one-to-one basis. Happy to do that for you. Documents and folders. So we have the ability here to move documents into the database. And going back to what I was saying earlier, it's not a dumping ground for all of your documentation. So all the folders you see here are relevant to Smith Software. I've got the ability to move folders and documents directly into the database, but I can also copy in folders and documents. So if you don't want to lose them from your current infrastructure, you can do that. So if I select create new folder, which I have done, rename it, I've got a second invoice folder. So let's just say that I receive a call from Smith Software and they want me to retrieve a folder. I can do that, and any documents I have within the folder can then be emailed. As you can see here, if I select a document, it brings to life the email option and the My Doc Safe option, which is our partner firm regarding secure portals for GDPR purposes. There we go. So there's the folders option. Again, that can be covered in greater detail if you have questions around how you move documents into the folder. Files is a reference to physical files such as cash books. That's really a bookmark for your references. And you can see here I can create references, locations, categorizations, confirm in terms of the dates in which the files were opened and closed, and there's a freeform notes section there as well. So that's essentially a bookmark for physical files such as cash books. And then finally, before we move into accounts production, we have a freeform notes section. Now, the freeform notes section will enable me to acknowledge, in this case, as you can see here, a telephone call from a client. But you have the option to create your own categories because the software is template driven. It means you can create your own categories throughout the usage of the software. So I have one there called telephone call already. So I might not want to duplicate that. But because the software is template driven, it means you can create your own categories. In the same way you can create your own, as we saw earlier, your own events to report on, you can create your own categories within the notes details page. So I have one there called telephone call because it's a great way of tracking that verbal communication, and it consolidates all the information for me. So if I wanted to reference a call in this particular example, I can do just that and go back into the database. It sort of avoids reliance on paper, etc. But I might want to have another category which I could utilize. So I guess another one outside a telephone call might be details around a face-to-face meeting. Okay, so if I was to create, and I will do, a bit of a nonsensical exchange relating to a telephone call, I can save and close that. It will provide me, and does provide me, with details in terms of the creation date. So you'll see here there's a creation date available alongside a modification date. So it gives me the creation date and it will give me the modification date in addition to that, if I've modified it, which I'm about to. There we go, so creation and modification. Right, okay, so we're going to move into the accounts production side of the database. We're running a little bit, as I'm sure you can work out, a little bit behind schedule here. So whilst I'm going to endeavour to wrap up and provide all the key information within the next 15 minutes or so, we may run slightly over the allotted hour. So if anyone has meetings post 10 o'clock that need to attend, I can send you a recording, but if you're happy to hang on for another 15, 20 minutes at the most, I'll be able to show you the key functionality within our accounts and tax module. It's one of the benefits of having so much functionality is that there is a lot of functionality, which is very useful. It just becomes a bit more difficult when you're trying to provide a complete demonstration of the product, which is why we have split product demos in terms of practice management and accounts and tax, which I'll be happy to share with you. So we're now looking at the tasks and tax returns tab within practice management. What I'm going to do from here is select the add option, And that's going to enable me to drop down in the same way we did when we created the event and when we acknowledged the event and reported on it. And this time around, I'm going to select year-end accounts because it is obviously a system event because you're using the software to complete it. That's our terminology, that's colloquial language, but we deem it as a system event. If you're not using our accounts production, or you don't need to use our accounts production, in this particular instance, you can select corporation tax that would take you into the CT return. Obviously, if we were looking at a sole trader or a partnership, you would have a different set of criteria in terms of the tax return, or indeed, as we can see here, the option to choose the correct template. So if we're working with sole trader, we'd have a sole trader set of accounts, or partnership set of accounts, or LP set of accounts. As it stands, we're looking at a limited company, so we have all the bases covered in terms of the type of template you would need to work with when dealing with your clients who are limited companies. So I'm going to select company small, FRS 102 section 1A. And you can see here we have the older incarnations of the templates relating to Frizzy 2015. But I'm going to select FRS 102 section 1A because that's relevant to this particular client. And then we can see here that we have, it's visible here that there's a drop down in terms of the accountant's report type. So for those of you who have affiliation with ACCA or ACEW or ICAS, you can select and identify that from here. I'm going to choose the full generic report and I'm going to choose open year-end accounts. And what that's going to do, it's going to roll forwards the correct template for me, but it's also going to move in and give me the opportunity to bring forward the data from the prior year. So essentially it's rolling forward the data from the prior year. So that's going to include officer data, that's going to include prior year figures, etc. So there we are. Are you sure you want to roll forward the data? Would agree to that. So we're now within the accounts production side of the database. Now, the key task here is how we build up the year-end account. So I'm going to explain in the limited time available the options which are available to you. So the first and most obvious option would simply be to key figures directly into the extended trial balance. So it's very rudimentary, but it works on that basis because all we're really looking to do is to get figures into what you'll see at the moment is the working schedule. This is not what the client sees. This is your working paper. This enables you to work to bring figures into the year-end accounts. So this isn't the polished article that your client would view. But on that basis, because it is very user-friendly, you can key figures directly into the extended trial balance as I have done there. So that's option number one. As I say, there's 4 options in total. The next option is our incomplete record functionality. Now the incomplete record functionality is, here we go, is a payment and receipt process. So it's almost akin to a bookkeeping solution. So it's a mini bookkeeping solution found within our year-end accounts. The idea is that if I select the add option, you can start to build up information around the accounts. I know that many of you would have worked with incomplete record functionality if you've got a number of clients who present you with carrier bags, the old cliche, carrier bags filled with receipts and bank statements. So from here, I can enter in descriptions of the bank account, the account number. Obviously, that was saved for you on a time-by-time basis. And then what you have the option to do is you have the option to reconcile periods. So you can reconcile within incomplete records via the usage of nominal codes. So you would select the nominal codes. This is the only area in which we operate with within our own structure of nominal codes. But the idea is you select nominal codes and you build up the accounts. In most cases, it would be for the period of a year, but it might be that you do it in line with that. So it might be on a quarterly basis or even a half-yearly basis. So this incomplete record functionality, again, is designed for you to work with opening balances, keying in figures, and then selecting the nominal codes and working with payments and receipts. Once you've done that, you reconcile, and then it moves the detail into the original trial balance for the current year. As a result of the roll forward, you'll notice that we have a prior year showing. That's because we've had the roll forward from the prior year. For those of you who would be using the software for the first time, you can simply key in comparatives for the prior year, or you can set the accounting period back a year prior, and then you can import the trial balance for the prior year period. Okay, so we covered two options. Option number 3 relates to journals, but we're going to come back to journals. I'm actually going to make journals option number 4. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you really how our software has been designed to work. So I'm going to choose, in most cases, I'm going to choose trial balance import. Now, I'm aware that most of you will be utilizing bookkeeping providers. We've designed the software so you can work with the following bookkeeping providers. So you can see here we've got a complete list of all the main players within the market. Xero, VT, Sage, Reckon One, QuickBooks, both online, and Desktop, Cashflow, Iris, Free Agent, Digita, and ClearBooks. Now I'm going to explain that there are a couple of differentiators here. So the online versions will open up the product within our database. So it will open up a gateway into Xero or to Free Agent or QuickBooks. The custom option is if you have a trial balance that's been worked out on paper as opposed to having been derived by the usage of a bookkeeping product. What I will do from here is I will select what I believe to be the correct option, and know to be the correct option for this particular client, and that is Xero. So I'm going to open up Xero within our database via a direct API into Xero. So I'm being asked for my credentials here. Once I get the cap locked off. And then what I can do from here is I can and will pick up. Here we go. So I'm picking up the trial balance. So if you were using a non-online version, such as Sage or whoever it might be, you pick up the CSV file and you get to this point. If you're using the custom option, you would select ID, description, value within the confines of your template, and then you would select from the drop-down the following. So I'm going to select from the drop-down, and then it remembers it for the second year. So it looks like cost of sales to me, purchases. Bank relates to cash at bank and in hands. Select that one. And then we've got tangible FA. And we want charges for the year against plant and machinery. And then finally, reserves, profit and loss account. Now what we can do is we can import that trial balance into the database. So regardless of whether you're using an online option such as Xero or Sage, with Sage you would save the CSV file and you pick up the CSV file. What we need to do now, or what we look to do now, is to show the fourth option, and that's the journal option. So for those of you who work with journals and make adjustments within the year accounts as opposed to within the bookkeeping, you can create a journal. And I'm going to do that very quickly. You see it's utilising the Xero codings. I can save and close. And what I'm looking to do now is to, having created the journal, which you can see posted in column D, is to run a journal export. So journal export will allow me to reconcile the changes I've made within the year-end accounts within the bookkeeping package. So I choose the export option. It will default to Xero because it knows that we've conducted the trial balance import via Xero. There it is. But if you're using VT or Sage or any of the other aforementioned, then you can select that relevant option to reconcile. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to check the accounts and generate the all important items graph file. And what we're going to have very soon is an acknowledgement that the IXBRL file has been checked and was right as well. What it's doing now, it's working out if there are any options around. So basically, I sort of alluded to it earlier when I mentioned that at times you could potentially receive warnings. Warnings are there for your consideration. We don't have any. Errors are there for you to rectify. So an error would be there if, say, the accounts don't balance, or maybe you forgot to do something such as potentially sign off the year-end accounts. That's a prime example. If the accounts don't balance, obviously, then there's going to be an error there which will need to be rectified. But what we can do now is we can come out of the accounts production, and then finally in the few minutes which are allowed, I can then select OpenCT return. And what I want to do now is to show you the link between our accounts production and the corporation tax return. So we've looked at the links between our accounts production and the various bookkeeping packages on the market. I'm now going to select OpenCT Comp and CT600, and that's going to open up the CT600 for me with the information that's taken from the year-end accounts. So this is the integration piece between our accounts and our tax modules. You see here it's listed turnover from trade or profession, profit per account. In addition to that, there's a couple of add backs and deductions which have been listed. We have the ability within the comp to open up supplementary schedules on the bottom left-hand side of the page here. So I've got the option to introduce capital allowances or property or capital gains, R&D, maybe C600A for overdrawn loans, etc., because there are other forms available for you. But the big point to mention is that any amendments that you make within the corporation tax return are reflected within the year-end accounts and vice versa, to the point whereby when we move into the corporation tax and we choose to sign off, there's obviously 11 pages here, when we choose to sign the famous 11 pages, when we choose to sign off the accounts, which we're about to do now, I need to confirm the status initially of the signee, as it's the first time I've utilised him. Clearly you can see he's the director. What I can now do is choose to check and generate the IXBRL. So what it will do now is it will provide additional integration and goes beyond what a lot of our competition offer, in that it works out the corporation tax return and ultimately it moves it into the year-end accounts. So it works out the corporation tax return and moves it into the year-end accounts. So that figure, there we go, we've got the nice message to say the corporation tax return was checked. That figure will now be shown within the year-end accounts. So if I come out of the corporation tax return, you can see it's now fully loaded with the tax payable details, and select open year-end accounts. When we open up the extended trial balance within the year-end accounts, we'll see that there is now a corporation tax provision figure sitting and waiting for us. There we go. So the corporation tax provision has been worked out. We've got the integration between not just accounts production and bookkeeping packages, but between accounts production and the corporation tax return. With the introduction of that figure, it means that I need to run it back past the IXBRL check, which I'm about to do now. We'll get the nice message to say that the year-end accounts are checked. And again, all is right with the world. That's actually opening up. I've got two monitors in front of me, just so you know. So the check is confirming itself on my other monitor. I'm not going to switch monitors now, but it just says, do you wish to accept the amended IXBRL file, which I'm agreed to. So I've clicked on that outside of your view, and we'll see now that the check accounts and generate IXBRL file option is grayed out. It's just working it out for me to make sure it's checked it. There we go. So we get the year-end accounts were checked and the IXBRL account files have been generated successfully. So all that I want to show you now in literally the next couple of minutes, because I'm in danger of running over time here, is to show you three things. The first thing is how you can interact with your client. So you can see here I've got a submit to client preview option found within the year-end account summary. Now this enables me to generate a report. You can see here there's a whole host of criteria that you can generate within the report in which you can communicate with your client. Now, I fully appreciate that you're going to cherry pick what you want your client to receiving the report. But I'm going to choose the full option, because really I want to show the speed in which the report takes to generate, and that's already been generated. Now we have partnership through our technology partners known as MyDocSafe, whereby if you were utilising their portal, it would enable you to send the year-end accounts over via the portal. There is still an email option. You can save it as a PDF and print preview. I'm going to choose the preview option. There we go. We spoke about some of the global templates, and one of them being the year-end accounts. You can see here we have a year-end accounts cover letter with a signature. So this picking up the information assigned to the client, but also the fluid information. And then you'll see that we have the figures for both the current and the prior year as a result of the roll forward introduction of the trial balance via Xero, with all the various notes to accounts which relate to the correct FRS template. Again, I'm not going to go into any greater detail because time doesn't allow it, but what I will say is that at this juncture, or prior to this juncture, there is an option to change the aesthetics, the feel, the sets of year-end accounts, because I appreciate that if you're a practitioner, this is what your client feels as they're paying for outside of financial advice in terms of compliance. So you can make it as bespoke as you wish through the malleable nature of the accounts in terms of changing aesthetics. You can even collapse notes and policies, etc., as you see fit, but we would always provide you with the correct template in line with the client type. So in this case, obviously, it's the FRS template. So that's how you produce a report that can be sent directly to your client. And then finally, it's just the submission process. So I've selected Submit Accounts. And what that will do, it will open up a submission box for me. Now, this relates to the affiliated accounts. So those of you who remember at the start of the presentation, I said that we can submit to both Companies House and to HMRC. It defaults to affiliated accounts, so it's a byproduct of using our software. So you're not having to produce it outside of the core usage. That's a big benefit, big time saver. I need to tick the box to confirm I have the authority for my client to submit these accounts, and then you submit affiliated accounts, and that will go directly through to Companies House. Now that goes through to Companies House. I'm just going to move, as I say, I've got two screens in front of me, so I'm just going to move the account submission details into your view. So you'll see here that it's created affiliated accounts. In the real world, it would go directly to Companies House. Now, how does it do that? It does that through you entering your CH Presenter ID, which remains static within the database. So if I select Systems and then Options within the top menu screen, see here we have Company House details. This is your CH Presenter ID. This remains static. This enables the electronic submission to Companies House. And we have also, in addition, the HMRC details and options for revenue filing, which also remains static. On that note, I'm going to select Open CT Return. And the final piece of the jigsaw within the confines of the demo will be to just, for sanity purposes, check the corporation tax return. So again, the big picture here is if we're moving from accounts into corporation tax, any changes that you make, I'll just open up on the corporation tax calculation so you can see it there. Any changes you make are reflected vice versa. So it's important to check prior to submission, because if you're making changes in the accounts, that's then reflecting the corporation tax, such as the nature of the product. And that really is its kind of key component in terms of it being beneficial. So we're just going to check that. There we go. We've got a nice message saying the corporation tax return was checked and the answer computation file has been generated successfully. So we can now come out of the return itself, and you can see here there's an option to submit to HMRC. And that's going to open up a similar submission box to the submission box we saw for the Company House submission. I select the submit option. What it's doing now is it's attaching that all-important IFA file to the electronic CT600. And I'll just bring in the submission box into play again because I've not on the other screen. So it's creating the new C600 return for submission. It's not going to be submitted. We're not looking to confuse the revenue with dummy data. But if it were a real life scenario with any of the 2,000 accountants, in fact more accountants, but 1,500 practitioners in terms of practices that use the software, were using the software in that kind of real-time scenario, then it would submit directly and you'd have all your notifications that the corporation tax return and the IXBRL file have been received, not just by HMRC but also by Compass House in the prior submission.